Good morning. It is May the 19th, 2023. And I'm getting ready to go out in the yard and I'm going to compare two fig varieties that I promised long ago that I would compare. Feliciano Bianco and also Desert King. They're very close, but there are distinguishing characteristics that I'm going to discuss today. I'm going to be discussing a lot of things, so stay tuned or join me right now, and I'm going to begin talking about those differences between those two varieties. Hello, I'm back, and I'm on my way to walking to the Feliciano Bianco, which we're going to discuss briefly, but in detail. And I had to stop to admire, for May 19th, some pretty good growth. And these are the main crop figs already showing up on my Peter's honey tree. And there's Breba here too. This is a beautiful tree that I've talked about several times, many times. I love this tree, and I love it this year too, and I love it every year. It's just a wonderful, marvelous specimen, and it produces just hundreds and hundreds of figs, both Breba and main crop figs. Wonderful. Beautiful tree, isn't it? Isn't it lovely? Okay, we'll take a quick walk. I'm not going to talk too much about varieties today. Maybe briefly mention them. This one I gave a haircut in the fall. It's Ronde Bordeaux, and the new growth. I want to show you. There's something significant. This is all new growth here already in only May. So you can see that sometimes when you prune, look at that, all new growth, beautiful. And this will produce quite a few figs. I can see them already forming right there. This will produce quite a few figs this year, and I cut it back because it's right next to the house, and I need to keep it tight with lots of branches. Okay, it's a different strategy that we employ for different locations and different varieties. Okay, we're moving along. This is my favorite Celeste that I've talked to you about. I'll talk to you about it in another video. And the deer have been eating away at it, and they've munched all this part, but here they have it, and it's doing really well, and it will continue to outgrow the deer. And this is an Adriatic, my favorite Adriatic in the world. We'll talk about that again. Let's move along. Oh yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about my XL, Ira Condit's XL, and that is Hardy Chicago. And unfortunately, it is Hardy Chicago, and I would prefer that it be another variation like Malta Black of the Mount Etna types. Hardy Chicago is not my favorite. I've tried it quite a few times. I mean, it's good. It's good. Don't get me wrong out there. I don't want to offend anybody. And it's very, very prolific. It produces a tremendous amount of figs. It really does. So here I gave another haircut earlier this year. And I'm hoping that this will branch out. This is another Ronde Bordeaux that I planted last year. And I'm hoping that it will grow. It will start to put out many more branches. It's already doing so. And here is the Feliciano Bianca. And this is an extraordinary fig variety with an extraordinary history, this particular one. You see it for a little tree. It's got some very nice Brebas on it already. Look how nice. Okay, and these Brebas, they tend to be a little greener when they mature, when they ripen finally, than the Desert King. I like to call Desert King, but that's one of the distinguishing characteristics. Very subtle. It's that they're a little greener, a little juicier, and the inside of the fig is just a little less of a neutral color. Okay, it's a little less amber, I think it's so hard really to compare them because they are different, but they're both very delicious, and I love them, and they both produce an extreme abundance of Breba first crop figs on last year's wood. They are both equal in the amount that they produce. Another distinguishing characteristic of Feliciano Bianco is that 20% of the main crop figs, even though it is a San Pedro type fig, San Pedro type figs, for those that are less experienced out there, San Pedro type figs are different than a lot of the main crop figs that we have, or the common figs that we have, whereas the very first crop, the Breba, will mature without pollinization, but the second main crop figs will not. Okay, and there's only a handful of the San Pedro types, and I've grown several of them. My favorite are the two that we're discussing now, no question, hands down. For me, for what it's worth, remember that often injected caveat, but the San Pedro types are extremely valuable and very, very much overlooked, especially for people that live in inclement climates, like in the Northeast, where lateness is a big factor, where you have late figs, too many late figs that never get ripe, depending on the varieties, especially some of the prima donna types that are just not suitable, simple as that, for our area. And so the San Pedro types are very valuable because the first crop figs, that's their largest crop. It's very abundant, and they all get ripe. And they get ripe right around the 4th of July, early July, when the conditions are just perfect for delicious tree-ripened figs of extremely high quality. Okay, so they're overlooked. I think my advice is that everyone has one that can, if they have the room, everyone in the Northeast or in other areas that aren't perfect, like California or Arizona and places like that, it's definitely a staple that should be in your collection. One or the other, it really doesn't matter whether it's Desert King or Feliciano Bianco. They're close enough that you'll be happy with the results of either one, but I'm here today to tell you about some of the distinguishing characteristics between the two. Okay, so 20% of the main crop figs will get ripe on Feliciano Bianco, but not on Desert King. They'll all fall off. All of the main crop figs will fall off because they lack pollination. Now, you might say, well, how come, Lou? I mean, why would 20% of the main crop figs get ripe? It's a San Pedro type. They're all supposed to fall. The answer to that, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. It's a genetic disparity. I think the best answer that I would come up with, and again, it's just a guess, okay? It's just a peripheral stab in the dark, if you will, okay? Is that because of genetic variation, genetic drift, because of geographic separation for centuries and centuries, where maybe this tree was growing in a remote area of Italy and another one was growing in a remote area of Greece or something of that nature, or in northern Africa, because of those genetic drifts, those genetic pools that would drift away from one another, because of the conditions that would be different, the environmental conditions that would gradually induce through evolution, some evolutionary changes, you get this genetic quirk where this San Pedro type does ripen 20% of its main crop figs. By the way, they're not very good. I would only classify them as being fair. They're totally different than the Brebas. The Brebas are, as I described to you in other videos, they're large and they're voluptuous and they're delicious and they're just full of nectar and they're so good, high quality, and I love them, and they're the first figs, and there's so many of them. There's so many reasons why you want to have one of these in your yard. The second crop fig, the main crop fig, that does get ripe 20%, they're just smaller, three quarters of the size, if that, maybe closer to between half and 3/4 of the size, and they're yellow. They're not even the same color. They look completely different and they taste different and they're not as good. But it does it. And so I'm speaking on that oddity You know, here it is, a San Pedro fig that does get ripe, so that some of the main crops do get ripe. Okay, now we're going to jump down a huge rabbit hole here. I got to make this quick because I don't want to be too long-winded here. But for those of you that are interested, I thought I would bring this up because I promised in previous videos that I would come back to this. This tree comes from Palermo, Italy, where my uncle brought it himself some 70 years ago from Italy when he came to America. And it's been here in the family. I've kept it preserved all of those years, and I'll never let it go. I haven't talked about it a great deal, but it has produced hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of figs over the years that I have just enjoyed eating so much. And you can see this tree, actually, and you can see the mature figs in one of my videos called Fig Varieties of the World, where my dear friend, now deceased, Danny Yakir, sent me a video. He came to America 3 times. He visited me. He and his lovely wife visited us. I gave him samples from all my collections, cuttings, and one of them was this, and he grew it there in Israel. And you will see it when he says, Uncle Mario. And he's showing me the progress of the trees that he took from me, the cuttings that he took from me. And when he says Uncle Mario, and then he eats it and says delicious, he takes his hat off and puts it back on. That's this tree. So if you want to see it in maturity, I'll make a video of it too when it matures. But it's very much like Desert King, as I was trying to say, but it's not Desert King. And it is different. The shape is tiny bit different. The color is different when it gets ripe. The flavor is a little different. Some of the other characteristics are a little bit different too. And I told you already about the main crop fig. Now, I say we're going to jump into a large rabbit hole, which I don't like jumping into, when we start to talk about leaf comparisons. So let's take a look at this. Look at the leaf. Now here you have a leaf that is, well, it's a little different than the Desert King. Okay, it's got 3 lobes, but does it really have 3 lobes? There's a lot of leaves here that are just single lobed, and the 3 lobe leaves are oddly shaped. Okay, they're kind of oddly shaped, and you will see, and I'll show you more of them. Look how odd they are. Okay, they're strange. Okay, they're 3 lobed, yes, but they're a bit odd. And let's go look, and there's a lot more single lobe. Now let's go take a look at Desert King. Okay, here we have Celeste, beautiful Celeste tree. This is ordinary Celeste, and it's already putting out a lot of main crop figs. It's going to make a lot of figs. But here's my beautiful Desert King, which I featured in other videos that you will be familiar with. It's a wonderful specimen. It's been here for over 25 years. It's just loaded everywhere you look. Look at it with breba everywhere. It just simply is. Okay, this is a mature tree, and when that Feliciano Bianco, it used to be big. It's a long story. I can't talk about it. It's just too long. But I had to remove it. And then sprouts came up, and I kept running them over with the lawnmower, and I just felt sorry for it one day. And about 2 years later, I just said to Debbie, I'm letting it grow again. It's a long story. But this particular tree's been here for over 25 years. So was that one. Okay? But what you see coming up is not as old. But the roots are as old. And if you look at the leaves here, okay, they're a little different. There's not as many single spaded leaves. There's more of these 5-lobed leaves on this tree. Okay, but they're fairly familiar, the 3-lobed. But I see a difference in their shape overall. But I see a lot more 5-lobed, and I see much less single-lobed. Now, can I see a single lobe here and there? There's one, kind of, but I don't see any others. Okay, so again, it's a very deep rabbit hole that I don't like, because when we start to try to compare leaves to identify specific varieties, It's not a good idea, because genetically, all fig trees will be traced back to one, or fig tree, original, and you get these residual genes that pop up, and you're always going to get different kinds of shapes. You're going to get all kinds of odd shapes of leaves on every tree occasionally. Not all the time, because certain varieties like Ronde Bordeaux have a very distinctive leaf. Other varieties, without going into it in a lot of detail, do have fairly distinguishing leaves that you can pretty much identify them by. Okay, but they have their variations in leaves too. Okay, so but I just wanted to compare these quickly to give you an idea and to let you take a look at this tree. This is Desert King. So what is the bottom line? Look how prolific it is. Look at this. It just makes so many figs, and they're all so delicious. And early July, by the 4th of July, I'll be eating these. You will see, look at the other videos. You will see this tree in a number of other videos. And every year it's productive. By the way, I should mention that it's extremely nematode resistant. So anybody out there that has sandy soil, and I see on the internet that they say sandy soils are good. No, they're not. Okay, for what it's worth, all right? I disagree. Sandy soils are not ideal for figs. You don't want that. But if you have them, and that's all you have to make do with what you have, do the best you can. And this is a variety that you might want to consider because it is so resistant to nematodes. Extremely. And so is Feliciano Bianco. They share that characteristic. Very resistant to nematodes. Isn't that a beauty, though? Let's back up a little bit and take a look at it. It's a beautiful fig tree. And every year, if you look at my videos, I have several years of this tree on video. So you will want to look at that. And you can compare. But it never fails me. Now, who would not want a tree like this? I always say that when I feature this tree. Who would not want it? Because I hear a lot of things on the internet. Oh, well, we don't like the San Pedro type figs. There's no room in my collection for... It's the most ridiculous thing. It's just so counter to reality. It's a wonderful tree to have in your collection, especially, but not exclusive to the fact that you might be living in the Northeast. Okay. What else do I want to show here? Here's another variety of Celeste, totally different, and a very, very good one that I love, or I wouldn't be growing here. I used to have a huge tree here, a gigantic Celeste tree, but I took it down. It's another, because it was 25 foot tall. Okay, and I can't go into the big stories about it. Some other time I will, I promise. And this is another wonderful staple in anybody's collection. Look how pretty these leaves are, and they have a certain texture of their own. See the shine on it too. This is La Tarula. This is the Italian honey fig, and I am just so looking forward to these producing this year because they're very, very delicious. They're not as delicious as Peter's honey, but when they're perfect, they're very, very, very delicious, and certainly deserving of an honorable mention. But perhaps the most important factor that distinguishes this tree from so many other varieties that are lacking in good characteristics, especially for growing in ground in the Northeast, this is a beast. This will produce. It's nematode resistant. It's prolific. It has two crops. There's Breba. There's none on this one this year. There's Breba and there's main crop figs. When this gets going, it will produce a lot of Breba and a lot of main crop figs. It's early, and it's fairly resistant to inclement weather and rain, and it's very reliable. It's a workhorse. It will just pump out the figs for you. And that's why we grow figs, isn't it? To eat them? Not to eat a dozen or 20 figs on a tree, but to have 80, 100, 200, 300, 500. I'm not exaggerating. this is one of the trees that you plant in your yard if you want lots and lots of figs, like these lots and lots and lots of figs. Okay, that's what you do. You plant varieties that are conducive to the climate conditions that you live in. Now this is a fig tree called Taramo Unknown. I'm not going to go into any detail about this. This was introduced, well, maybe a little detail. This was introduced by Big Bill of Off the Beaten Path Nurseries near Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In my opinion, one of the best people in the business. Honest, knowledgeable. He found this growing on the Delmarva Peninsula, and which I'm on the Delmarva Peninsula too, and he took this tree, he took some cuttings, and well, the rest is history. It's a unique variety. It's a very, very, very tough, winter hardy. By the way, the Feliciano and the Desert King, and of course the tree I just talked about, the Celeste trees and the Laterule, the Italian honey fig, are very, very, very winter hardy. And so is this. So is Taramo Unknown. Very hardy, very well adapted to the area. This is 7B, okay? But it's a very cold 7B surrounded by the Atlantic Oceans and the bay. Very, very cold, but it survives without any protection, like all of the figs here in my yard in 7B do. None of them are protected. And this is a very, very productive tree that I highly, highly recommend to have in your collection for in-ground. It's a wonderful variety. I like it. And the figs are unique. And I featured this in some of my other videos, especially when I was talking about my potted figs. And so you will find this tree in my other videos. But when this gets ripe this year, I'll make another video for you. And we'll go over the characteristics of this particular fig variety. It is very different than other varieties, and it's worth mentioning, and it's worth having in your collection. If you have room, put it in your collection. Trust me, okay? Okay, over here I have another Adriatic, JH Adriatic. I'm going to cut this short because I will go on and on. You know I will. I better not. Okay, you know, Adriatics are Adriatics. I have a lot of videos about this business, about, you know, how many figs are being sold under different names, or they're being, you know, introduced to the fig community as being something very, very different than another variety, so-called variety with another name, which really is nothing but an Adriatic, or nothing, maybe if you talk about the Mount Etna types, nothing but a Mount Etna type with a slight variation because of those drifting gene pools that I mentioned earlier, okay? And there are some slight differences, okay? So let me be clear. There are some very slight differences between the Adriatics, which is a class of figs that's well known for being green on the outside and very red and delicious and strawberry-ish like on the inside, okay? I use that term very loosely, because I don't like comparing figs to berries at all. They're figs, they're figs, they're figs. You know, if you looked at my videos, you'll see they're figs, they're figs. Please don't call them berries. But it is that color, and it is known for its, and renowned really for its exquisite flavors, okay? It's tangy, delicious, rich flavors. And I love the Adriatics. Most of them are on the late side if you grow them in the ground, if you don't give them a head start. You know, in that sense, perhaps they're more suitable for pots, but I find that they're not very suitable. I don't like them in pots, personally. That's my opinion for what it's worth, okay? I like growing them in ground, and you can get away in 7A and 7B with growing them in the ground if you do the right things, which I talked about in other videos and can't talk about right now. There's just too much ground to cover. But there's ways to make your, and one of them isn't oiling your figs. Please never, 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 never oil your figs. Never put any oil on the eye of your figs to make it ripen sooner. It's the worst possible advice that anyone could give you. Please don't do it. It really takes away from quality tremendously. Don't do that. There are other ways that you can make your figs come into fruition much earlier. I talk about that in my other videos. I'll talk about it again if you like. Send me some messages. But what I'm trying to tell you is most of them, if you put them in a sweet spot where they get plenty of sun, and if they're in 7A or 7B, they will get ripe. Some will get ripe a little bit later. This JH is a little earlier. That's how I would distinguish it. Okay, it's just a little earlier. It's a very good tasting Adriatic. All the Adriatics are good. JH is good, but I like my uncle's fig from Teramo more. The difference between here I go again. I'm sorry, I apologize, but I know some of you out there want to hear this information. The difference I noticed between my Adriatic, which was my uncle's Adriatic, and say JH Adriatic, this JH variety or version, is this tree will produce in a couple of years when you plant it. See, it made lots of figs last year, and it's going to make lots more this year. Okay, it's a little late, as I said, the main crop figs. They don't usually make Breba, but sometimes they do. Even trees that are known not to produce Breba occasionally do, like Ronde Bordeaux, things of that nature. The Adriatic that I have, uncharacteristic to the Adriatics, it does make, once it gets mature, it does make more Breba, first crop figs on last year's wood. The other thing is, my Adriatic takes several years to start producing any figs. You have to really be patient. Sometimes it takes 4 years. I have to say that I've had varieties that I've taken, branch 5 years. But once they start to produce, and I've had big ones, especially back in New Jersey, large ones that I had to cover up that were sometimes, they got up to 20 foot tall. And I had to wrap them real well because I wanted to preserve them because they were so good. But they take a long time. That particular variety takes a long time to start producing any figs. And even if you pinch and all that, which I don't highly recommend all the time, I talked about that in my videos about pinching. If it's a very vigorous tree, it's okay. But when they're little, please don't do that. It puts too much a strain on them. Let the root system grow. Let them expand. Let them mature before you start doing things like that. The trees that are in large orchards in California and other places in the country and in other countries, nobody runs up on big ladders and pinches all. You don't have to do that. I talk about that in my other videos. But even if I were, not this one, because this one will produce. This is producing already in the last couple of years. But even if I were to pinch, well, maybe I'll take a walk over there and talk to you about it. That's better. Let me do that. Okay, here we are at my uncle's Adriatic. Sometimes I call it strawberry verte. I don't know what it is. I know it's Adriatic. There's no question about that. But how could I possibly know? But it most certainly 100% is an Adriatic. And it will produce uncharacteristically more Breba than the other Adriatics that I'm familiar with. And I can see that it's starting to make little dimples there that are going to be figs. Okay, this year. But there's another one there. But this is a pretty well established tree now. This is look at it. It's beautiful. It's rich. It's healthy. It's vibrant. I need to do some weeding, which I'll do as soon as I'm finished this video. And it's prolific. Once it gets started, it's very prolific. And I love this particular variety. But I have not gotten one single fig from this tree yet. And that's what distinguishes it from Adriatic JH. Okay. But other than that, really the differences between the Adriatics are kind of small. I think for the money, JH Adriatic is all you really need in your collection. I know I'm putting my neck on a chopping block with that one. There's people out there that want to sell other varieties or other names of Adriatics. But in my opinion, There's not much difference between them. And so they're all delicious. Just use some of the techniques that I've talked about in my previous videos for getting an earlier crop. Okay, and we will talk, I promise we will talk about that again, but if you look up my videos, you will find that information. There are legitimate ways to get earlier crops, even with your in-ground fig trees. Okay, and they work, and they will not affect the quality of your figs. So, are we finished? Yes, we are finished. And I haven't made a video for a little while. I'm going to start making more. Thank you for visiting me today. It's been a long winter. I've been occupied with lots of things in my life. I have a full life. I'm happy to tell you and report. And I had a busy winter, and it was a good winter. But now I'm looking forward to summer. I'm looking forward to my figs producing. I'll be making more videos and talking about a lot of different peripheral subjects or aspects of growing figs and gardening in general and organic gardening. So, with that, good day.